Today we're going to begin the first step in creating your ceramic mug. I have a nicely even rolled slab of clay, I have my paper template, all of my supply tools, a piece of tape. So the first step is to add a little cornstarch to your clay. Not so much. If you add too much cornstarch, it'll dry out your clay really quickly. I have my template here because I want to think about where am I going to add texture. Please feel free to layer your textures. You know, that's up to you. I'm going to use my koi fish, so I'm thinking about placement. I want those to be right through the center of my mug there. So I definitely would recommend standing up for this. I'm using a medium amount of pressure. Don't use so much pressure that you make your mug too thin. I also think I'm going to use this at the bottom of my mug. I like the contrast of the organic fish and the geometric grid. And I really like this Indian fabric stamp, and I'm going to use that to create some diamonds at the top. I think that looks pretty neat. I think this is the fun part where you just sort of get to experiment. Right. The next step is to look at that design, decide how you want it to look on your mug, and then you want to hold that design nice and even as you're cutting out your mug. Notice that my knife is perpendicular to the table. I definitely would recommend standing up for this part. You get a nicer, nice bird's eye view, and you can really see what you're doing a bit better. I have some extra scraps. I'm going to store those in my extra Ziploc bag. Remember, you have two bags, one for your project and one for your scraps. Okay, I'm going to place my template aside. So this is the body of my mug. Now I want to flip that over, and I want to create that nice drinking edge. I recommend a slightly damp sponge. I got this wet and wrung out almost all of the water. And I'm just going across the top to bevel that in a little bit so it'll be, you know, actually comfortable to drink out of. Do not make that too thin, however. All right. The next step is to take your paper template. That's why you have that little piece of tape. And you're going to tape that on there, and you want to make sure that it can move a little bit. You don't want it so tight that it can't slide up and down. If it's a little too tight like mine, loosen it up and check to make sure it slides a little bit. Okay. Placing the clay towards your body like this, I'm going to start on the end, and if you'll notice, I'm lifting up the clay with my thumbs. And I'm not using a whole lot of pressure, but I do want to allow my clay to overlap. Take care with your texture. Odds are some of it's going to get a little damaged, but you can also do some carving later on, and the glaze will cover up quite a few imperfections. So now we're going to cut our beveled edge seam. So we don't want to cut straight on towards the cylinder like that. We want to cut at an angle, and my goal is to cut on a straight line here, but I want to angle it. Once you do that, you can put your extra scraps in your scrap pile. Now this clay is very wet, but it's still a good idea to score and slip a little bit. Probably don't have to do a whole lot. I'm going to see how well that seam goes back together. Yep, that works nicely. My main goal is to create a nice even seam there. I don't want a hole in my mug there. I also, as you can see, I'm trying to take care of my texture. I don't want to lose too much of that. Like I said, though, we can maybe work with that a little bit later on. All right, let's see if I can remove the cylinder. Yep, my cylinder removes nicely. I'm going to take that paper out. I would recommend holding on to this paper just in case. You never know when you might need it. So place that in your supply bin. I have a really great tip for storing your piece since you're not going to be working with it for a couple days. I have a Ziploc bag for you. I would recommend opening up that Ziploc bag, placing it on the table. I'm checking to see if my cylinder is in pretty good shape. Yeah, it looks pretty good. It's very, very wet, so I don't want to do more with it today than I really have to. It will actually dry out inside this bag. However, do make sure that your bag is sealed up. Then I'm going to be placing that right in my storage bin. So I want to lift that up, take a look at it, make sure it's still setting upright. I would put my other scraps in my extra bag. You want to protect your extra scraps because you're going to be using these for your base as well as your handle. So please don't wad these up in a giant ball of clay. That just creates more work for yourself because then you'll have to wedge it. I might even recommend placing your scraps right in your bin and placing your mug on top if you think it will set nice and even. Also make sure that when your partner stores their things on this side that they don't accidentally bump into yours and knock them over.